The jet landed smoothly just after sunrise. From the outside, it looked like any other private jet, quiet and clean, with no sign of the power inside it. The man who stepped down the stairs did not rush. He never did. He moved with calm control, the kind that comes from years of knowing that time usually bends to your schedule. His clothes were simple but expensive. Nothing loud, nothing extra. Just enough to say he did not need to prove anything to anyone. He had traveled across borders many times in his life. Some trips were personal, most were business. This one felt important, but not risky. He had reviewed the numbers himself. He had listened to his advisors. He had met the partners twice already. Everything looked solid, clean, safe, the kind of deal people talk about for years. When they speak of smart decisions, a car was waiting. Dark color. No markings. The driver said little, only greeting him politely before pulling into traffic. The city slowly woke up around them. Shops opened their shutters. Workers crossed the street with coffee cups. The Sheikh watched it all from the back seat, his thoughts already moving ahead to the meeting scheduled for the next day. The deal was large. Bigger than most he had done recently. It involved land, development, and a long-term partnership with people who spoke well and smiled often. They had shown him blueprints, future plans, promises of shared growth. Everything sounded respectful, mutually beneficial. No pressure, no rush. That was what he liked most. When people rush, they hide things. These partners had done the opposite. They asked for patience, time. Trust had always been his strength, and sometimes his weakness. At the hotel, staff greeted him by title, though he never asked for it. He nodded politely, signed nothing but the room charge, and asked for quiet. He did not need much. A place to think. A place to read once more before the final signature. The documents were already laid out. On the table when he entered the suite, neatly organized, tabs placed with care. His legal advisor had left notes. Everything checked. Everything approved. Still, the Sheikh sat without touching them. He had learned long ago that confidence should not cancel caution. He poured himself tea and walked to the window. Cars below looked like moving dots. Busy lives, all going somewhere important to themselves. He remembered his early years. Times when nothing was guaranteed. When deals were dreams and contracts were promises floating in the air. Those days taught him how to read people, not just paper. That is why he planned one more day before signing. Not to review numbers, but to feel the environment. To move among ordinary places, away from polished conference rooms. He believed truth had a habit of showing itself when you were not looking directly at it. Later that evening, instead of dining in the hotel, he walked outside. No guards close by. No reserved tables. Just a calm walk down the street, guided by instinct rather than hunger. He found a small restaurant on a quiet corner. Warm lights. No fancy signs. Just the smell of cooked food drifting into the air. Inside, a few tables were occupied, couples talking softly. An older man reading something while waiting for his meal. The Sheikh chose a corner seat. Nobody recognized him. That suited him fine. A young waitress came over with a menu. Her clothes were plain, her hair tied back neatly, her voice respectful, but not nervous. She did not rush him or pretend to be cheerful. She simply did her job. He ordered something simple. He always did when traveling. Food that didn't distract the mind. While waiting, he took out a thin folder from his bag. Just one copy of the documents. He did not open it fully, only skimmed a few pages. Old habit. Reading without really reading. Letting the body notice what the mind might miss. The waitress returned with his meal. She placed it gently, making sure not to spill anything, then stepped back. As she turned away, her eyes briefly caught the edge of the folder. It was nothing at first. Just a glance. But her pace slowed for half a second. The Sheikh did not notice. He ate quietly. Thought about the men he would meet tomorrow. Their confident words. Their careful laughter. The way one of them avoided eye contact when discussing ownership terms. A small detail. Probably nothing. His phone rang. He answered without thinking, speaking in Arabic. His tone was low, controlled. He talked about timing, about final steps, about trust. He mentioned a sentence from the contract, repeating it the way it had been explained to him. That was when the waitress stopped completely. She stood by the service counter, holding a tray but not moving. Her face had changed. Not fear, not excitement. Something quieter. A tension behind the eyes. The Sheikh ended the call and placed the phone face down. He did not look up immediately. He took another bite, finished his tea. When he finally raised his head, he noticed her again. She was watching him, but not him exactly. The papers. Their eyes met briefly. She looked away quickly. People notice documents all the time, he thought. It was normal curiosity. Or maybe she recognized the language. He finished eating and placed the folder back into his bag. As he stood to leave, the waitress came over with the bill. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed it down. He thanked her and reached for his wallet before he could speak again. She hesitated, then said something softly. So softly, it almost sounded accidental. But it was in Arabic. His hand froze. He looked up at her. Not sharply. Just slowly, carefully. She realized immediately what she had done. Her eyes widened. She swallowed. For a moment, it seemed like she might apologize or say she meant nothing by it. Instead, she added one more word, quieter than the first. That word stayed with him, even as he walked. Back into the night, he returned to his hotel room and closed the door behind him. The city noise faded. The silence felt heavier than before. He sat down at the table and opened the documents again. This time, he read every line, especially the sentence she had heard, and for the first time since the deal began. The Sheikh did not feel certain. He felt watched by something he could not yet see. He did not sleep well that night. The room was quiet, yet his mind kept circling the same thought. One small sentence. Spoken softly, not loud enough to accuse, not clear enough to explain. And yet it refused to leave him. By morning, the city outside his window was already busy. He stood there for a long time, holding a cup of tea he barely touched. Normally, before a big decision, he felt calm, certain. This time, something felt unsettled. He sat at the table again and opened the file. Slowly, page by page. He had read these papers many times before. His advisors had reviewed them. Lawyers had approved them. On the surface, nothing was wrong. But now he was reading differently. Not as a businessman. As a man who had learned that danger often hides in polite language. There it was. The sentence. It was buried deep in the contract, surrounded by words that sounded normal, even kind. It spoke about adjustments, future revisions, and shared authority. Read quickly, it meant nothing serious. Read carefully, it meant everything. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The waitress did not know him. She did not know this deal. Yet somehow she had reacted immediately. Why? People who work long hours learn to ignore what does not concern them. Curiosity alone does not stop someone in their place. Something else had. He decided not to attend the morning meeting right away. Instead, he sent a polite message saying he needed more time to review some matters. No explanations. No apologies. That raised questions. The partners replied quickly, friendly.com, telling him there was no pressure. That trust mattered more than speed. Their words were smooth. Too smooth. Later that afternoon, he returned to the same street. He told no one where he was going. He did not change his clothes or his appearance. He wanted to be noticed as little as possible. The restaurant was open again. Same warm lights. Same humble look. Inside, it felt the same. Familiar. The waitress was there. She froze when she saw him. Not because he was important, because she remembered what she had done. He chose the same corner table. This time he did not open any documents. He ordered tea only. When she brought it, their eyes met again. She was nervous. He thanked her and waited. He did not speak further. He knew silence often gave people more room to reveal themselves. She wiped a nearby table that did not need wiping. Her movements were stiff. Finally he spoke. He said one sentence. In Arabic, the same one she had said, her face drained of color. "I didn't mean to interfere," she said quickly, lowering her voice. "I'm sorry if I crossed a line." "You did not," he replied calmly. "You noticed something." She hesitated. "It's not my place," she said. "I serve food. That's all. It may be your job," he said. "But it is not all you are." She looked down. He asked her to sit. She refused at first, glancing around. Then she nodded and pulled a chair slightly, keeping distance. "I only heard part of your call yesterday," she said. "I wasn't trying to listen." The words just stood out. "Why?" She pressed her fingers together. "Because I've heard them before," she said. The room seemed quieter. She explained slowly. Years ago, she had worked as a translator. Not official. Nothing prestigious. Just helping people who didn't understand legal language. Contracts, agreements, promises, written in ways that confused ordinary people at first. She thought she was helping. Then she noticed patterns. Certain phrases appeared often. Always explained as harmless. Always linked to sudden losses later. Properties gone. Rights changed. Control removed. She had warned someone once. They did not listen. Everything they owned disappeared within a year. Her voice did not shake when she spoke, but her hands did. "I left that work after that," she said. "I didn't want to see it again." "But you recognized it in my papers," he said. She nodded. "I didn't know who you were," she said. "I still don't, but I knew that sentence." He nodded slowly. He did not ask her opinion. He did not ask what he should do. He simply thanked her. That confused her even more. He paid for the tea and stood to leave. "Please forget this," she said quickly. "I don't want trouble. You have done nothing wrong," he said. "You may have done something very right." She watched him leave, unsure whether to feel relief or fear. Back at the hotel, he made calls. Quiet ones. 2 people who owed him honesty. He asked them not what the contract said, but what it allowed. Some answers came late. One advisor went silent for too long before speaking. Another suggested alternative interpretations. That was enough. The Sheikh canceled the signing meeting. This time, the response was not calm. Messages arrived asking if something was wrong, offering calls, offering explanations. He replied politely, saying only that he required a deeper review. By evening, pressure began. Hints that delays could affect trust, that others were waiting, that opportunities did not last forever. He smiled to himself. People only rush. When time is working against them, he requested a copy of the original draft of the agreement, the one created before negotiations began. It arrived with edits marked. Red lines everywhere. Small changes, big consequences. He did not sleep again. In the early hours, he understood the shape of the trap. Not illegal, just clever. Designed to shift control over time, quietly, without drama. By the time anyone noticed, it would be too late. He thought again of the restaurant, of the young woman who could have said nothing and walked away. Instead, she chose discomfort. In the morning, he sent one final message to his partners. The deal was off. The reply came fast. Anger. So, the truth had been there all along. He closed his phone and leaned back. This deal was finished, but something else was just beginning. The day after the deal was canceled, the Sheikh did not celebrate. There was no relief yet, only quiet focus. Walking away was one thing. Understanding everything was another. He stayed in the city, even though his assistants suggested leaving. He told them he needed fresh air, time to think. In truth, he stayed because questions remained unanswered. The partners did not hide their anger anymore. Messages turned cold. Calls became sharp. One of them accused him of breaking trust. Another warned that backing out so late would damage his reputation. He listened without responding much. Threats dressed as advice had never impressed him. Still, he wondered how carefully the trap had been built. It was not rushed. It was patient. Whoever designed it understood his way of thinking, understood pride and reputation, understood how trust can be used as a rope instead of a bridge. That bothered him more than the money. Late that afternoon, he returned to the restaurant again, not because he needed answers from the waitress, but because unfinished conversations tend to pull at the mind. She was not working that day. For some reason, that disappointed him more than he expected. He ordered tea anyway and sat quietly. The chair across from him remained empty. He stayed only a few minutes before standing to leave. As he turned, he heard her voice, not speaking to him, speaking to someone else. He looked back. She had just entered, wearing a worn jacket, her hair still tied back. She looked surprised to see him. This time, she did not freeze. He waited. She approached slowly. "I thought you'd left already," she said. "I considered it," he replied, "but something told me not to." She nodded, as if she understood that feeling. They spoke only briefly. She was finishing a shift at another job, helping a friend. Life did not pause for curiosity or fate. Before leaving, he asked her one thing. "Why did you speak?" She thought for a long moment. "Because I've learned that silence can be expensive," she said. That answer stayed with him longer than any legal explanation. Over the next few days, he arranged quiet meetings with neutral experts, people with no interest in partnership or politics. They confirmed what he already knew. The deal would have slowly moved control away from his side. Not immediately. Not loudly. But surely, the strategy impressed even his most experienced advisors. That disturbed him. Because impressive deceit is still deceit. As the truth became clearer, the pressure grew stronger. Rumors spread that he had panicked. That age had made him overly cautious. That fear had ruled his decision. He let the rumors live. They were cheaper than regret. One evening, his assistant mentioned something casually. The waitress had asked the restaurant owner for time off the following week. She planned to leave the city for a while. He said nothing at first. Later that night, he found himself thinking of that moment when she almost apologized for helping him. People like her did not expect good outcomes. That was something he understood. Deeply the next morning, he asked his assistant to invite her for a conversation. No pressure. No explanations. Just an offer. She arrived nervous, but composed. They met in a quiet public place. Not his hotel. Not an office. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere safe. She sat across from him with hands folded carefully, as if preparing for judgment. "Relax," he said gently. "I didn't bring you here to question you," she nodded, though her shoulders remained tense. "I want to understand you," he continued. That surprised her slowly. She spoke of early responsibility, of learning languages not for travel or beauty, but for survival, of helping family members read documents they could not understand, of realizing too late how words could be twisted without breaking rules. She spoke of guilt that never fully went away, of walking past opportunities because they smelled too familiar. When she finished, neither of them spoke for a while. Finally, he asked her if she planned to leave. "Yes," she said. "I don't like attention." He smiled faintly. "Attention is loud," he said. "But opportunity doesn't have to be." She looked at him, unsure what to think. He did not offer money. Not directly. He offered something heavier. Choice. He told her he was building something new. Not just a project, but a way of doing business that required clarity at every level. People who noticed details before disasters. People who understood not just numbers, but consequences. "I don't need your loyalty," he said. "I need your honesty." Silence stretched between them. Finally, she asked, "Why me?" "Because you saw what others missed," he answered. "And because you spoke when it was uncomfortable." She did not accept immediately. That earned his respect even more. Later that evening, he received news from one of his former partners. The deal had already been reshaped and offered to someone else. Hastily, urgently, he felt no regret. Some lessons must be expensive to be remembered as the days passed. The city felt different to him. Less like a meeting place, more like a turning point. He walked more. Observed more. Power felt lighter when shared with awareness. Before leaving, he returned to the restaurant one last time. She was not there. Only the empty chair remained. But her words echoed louder than before. Silence can be expensive. On the flight out, he stared at the clouds and understood something clearly. Deals come and go, but character always leaves a mark, and this story was not over yet. The flight landed before sunrise. From the window, the Sheikh could see the first signs of morning spreading slowly across the land. He felt older than when he had left, not in body, but in understanding. Back home, life did not pause. Meetings waited. Messages piled up. People wanted statements, explanations, reactions. He gave none. He returned to routine, allowing the noise to fade into the background. But what had happened stayed with him. The deal was gone, yet its shadow remained. He asked himself again and again how close he had come to losing something he had spent decades building. Not only wealth, but reputation, trust, legacy. The answer was uncomfortable. He had almost lost it because everything had looked too perfect in the days that followed. Reports arrived from his team. Quiet investigations confirmed his fears. The same group had approached others using similar structures. Some had signed. Some were already tied into obligations they did not fully understand. Nothing illegal. Nothing dramatic, just slow damage. He thought of the waitress often, of her decision to speak with nothing to gain. No protection, no promise. That kind of courage did not come from confidence. It came from scars. He asked his assistant for updates. She had, indeed, left the city. No forwarding address. No social accounts. Nothing. She wanted to disappear. He respected that. Still, disappearance should be a choice, not a necessity. He began making changes. Inside his organization, he questioned things he had never questioned before. Who reviewed contracts? Who approved language? Who benefited from complexity? Some people were uncomfortable. A few resisted. That told him enough. One advisor, someone he had trusted for years, grew defensive under pressure. Explanations became circular. Justifications came too quickly. The Sheikh let him speak. Then he listened closely by the end of the conversation. The truth was clear. Not betrayal exactly, but negligence wrapped in ego. A belief that past success meant future safety. That advisor was quietly removed. The decision cost the Sheikh politically. Loyal faces vanished. Whispers started. He did not mind. Weak foundations should be exposed early. Weeks passed. The city where the deal had almost been signed became just another memory. But one evening, a letter arrived. It was handwritten. Returned address unfamiliar. He recognized the handwriting immediately. She wrote simply. No drama. No emotion displayed openly. She thanked him for listening. She said she had accepted temporary work elsewhere and was learning to be comfortable with uncertainty at the end. She added one line, I hope I didn't cause trouble. Read that sentence twice. Trouble was exactly what had saved. Him, he responded the same way she wrote, simple, honest, he. Told her that speaking had consequences, but silence would have cost more. He reminded her that insight was not a crime. He did not ask where she was. Some conversations should remain one step apart. At the same time, news reached him that the reshaped deal had collapsed. The new investor had discovered the same issue just later. Losses followed. Lawsuits threatened. The Sheikh felt no satisfaction, only confirmation around him. People praised his wisdom, his patience, his foresight. They knew nothing of a quiet restaurant or a woman with a shaking hand. That invisibility bothered him. True moments rarely leave records. He began designing something different. A foundation attached to his business interests, focused on clarity and ethical review. Not charity. Not publicity. A safeguard. Language specialists. Independent minds. People trained to spot danger hidden under politeness. Some partners laughed. He let them. Months later, he traveled again. New country. New opportunities. Before signing anything, he added one step to the process. Every major agreement was read aloud. Slowly, in plain words. Nothing hidden behind tradition or ego. It irritated impatient people. That was the point. One evening, while reviewing applications for the foundation, he recognized a style of writing. Direct, careful, honest. It was her. She had applied without referencing him. Without expectation, he smiled. The interview was brief, no praise. No reminders of the past. He offered her a role based on responsibility. Not gratitude, she accepted. Their working relationship remained professional, respectful, quiet. There were no dramatic conversations about that night. No reminders. Trust grew slowly. That was how it should be. Years later, many people would say the Sheikh's success came from intelligence, experience, discipline. Few would know the truth it came from listening, and from learning that wisdom sometimes wears an apron and speaks only once. When it matters most, the world continued to move loudly. But for the Sheikh, decisions were never the same again. Time moved forward, whether lessons were learned or not. For the Sheikh, time now felt different. It was no longer something to race against. It was something to walk with. Years passed quietly. The foundation he had created did not seek attention. It worked in the background, reviewing language, testing intentions, slowing down processes that once rushed forward unchecked. Deals became fewer, but stronger. Partnerships became quieter, but more honest. People noticed the change. Some admired it. Others avoided it. Both reactions suited him. He no longer felt the need to sit at the head of every table. Often, he listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, people leaned in, because they knew his words had weight. The woman from the restaurant grew into her role naturally. She was never loud in meetings. She did not argue to be right. She asked careful questions that made rooms go silent. She had a way of pausing at the exact wrong place in sentences, forcing people to explain what they hoped no one would notice at first. Some executives dismissed her. They did not do so twice. The Sheikh watched this from a distance. He never interfered. Respect earned its own space. One afternoon, a young advisor asked him why he trusted her so completely. He smiled, but did not answer directly, because she once risked being ignored, finally said. That answer confused the advisor. It did not need clarification. The world outside continued, as it always had. Deals were made. Promises were broken. People chased speed instead of stability. News cycles moved fast. Forgetting yesterday's lessons, sometimes the Sheikh would think back to that first restaurant visit. The warm lights. The quiet corner. How easily life could have moved in a different direction. A single sentence, spoken softly. Enough to change everything one day. An invitation arrived from a global business forum. They asked him to speak about leadership and risk. He almost declined. Public speaking no longer interested him, but something made him accept. On the stage, he did not speak of numbers. He did not speak of success. He spoke of listening. He spoke of the danger of confidence without humility, of how systems fail when ordinary voices are ignored. He told no personal story, no names, no details. Still, some people in the audience leaned forward, sensing the truth behind the words. When he finished, applause followed. He left quietly. Back home, life returned to its calm rhythm. Meetings, walks, reading. One evening, as the sun lowered, he received a message from the woman he had once met as a waitress. She thanked him for trusting her work on a recent project. It had been difficult. Several people had pushed back, but it was worth it, she wrote. He set the phone down and looked out the window. It was not because the project succeeded, because integrity had. Later that week, they spoke briefly in the hallway after a meeting. No long conversation. No reflection on the past. Just a shared understanding. Some journeys do not need reminders. As years continued, the Sheikh began stepping back slowly. Not disappearing, but loosening his grip. Younger leaders took more responsibility. Systems guided decisions instead of egos. That had been the goal all along. On his final official day, he visited a small cafe near his office. Nothing fancy. Just warm lights and quiet tables. He ordered tea and sat. By the window, no one recognized him. He liked that. The waitress brought the cup with a polite smile and moved on. She did her job well. She did not know she served someone whose life once changed. Over a similar table, he watched the steam rise and felt grateful, not for wealth, not for power, but for the reminder that wisdom is not owned by titles. When he left, he placed more than payment on the table. A simple note folded beneath the cup. It read only one line: "Never doubt your voice." As he stepped back into the street, the noise of the world surrounded him again. Cars, people, movement. Nothing looked different, but everything was. The story would never be written in newspapers. No record would explain how one deal was saved. Was fine. Some truths survive best when carried quietly from one conscience to another, and so the Sheikh walked on, knowing that real power had nothing to do with who speaks the loudest, but with who listens when it matters most. Life has a strange way of reopening doors we think are already closed. Just when the Sheikh believed that chapter was finished, the lesson returned in another form. It began quietly one morning. Reports came in about a regional project he had only a small connection to. He was no longer directly involved, but his foundation had reviewed parts of the agreement months earlier. At the time, nothing serious had raised concern. The language was clean. The intentions seemed fair. Now, something was wrong. A local business owner had raised questions. Payments delayed. Responsibilities shifting. Nothing dramatic, but familiar. To familiar, the Sheikh took interest again, not as an investor, but as an observer. He asked for the full documents, not summaries. He asked for timelines, not explanations. As he read, he felt that same quiet tension he had felt in the restaurant years before. It was there again, not the same sentence, but the same pattern. Polite words hiding imbalance. He realized then that this was not about one deal or one moment. It was a repeating cycle. A system that survived because most people were too busy, too trusting, or too afraid to stop it this time. He did not step in personally. He watched how others responded. His foundation team examined the documents. Questions were asked. Meetings slowed. Pressure appeared from the other side, almost immediately. That was the signal. The woman who had once been a waitress led that. Review.com prepared. Clear, she did not accuse. She did not warn. She asked for definitions. She asked what would happen 5 years later. She asked who benefited. Nothing went wrong. The room grew uncomfortable. That was progress. Within weeks, the structure of the agreement changed. Roles were clarified. Control balanced. Exit paths made visible. The local business owner remained protected. No. Headlines followed. But something had shifted. The Sheikh realized that this was the real ending he had not expected. Not his own peace, but continuity. The lesson had moved beyond him. One afternoon, he and the woman shared tea after a long day. Not to celebrate. Just to sit quietly. She thanked him again. It's time for insisting on systems instead of favors. People don't always need saving, she said. Sometimes they just need time. He nodded. Wisdom had fully changed hands. As months passed, others began to notice. Younger professionals started asking to join the foundation. Not for status, but because they were tired of fixing problems after damage was done. The Sheikh attended fewer meetings. When he did, it was often as the quietest person in the room. That was deliberate. One evening, while walking alone, he passed a small restaurant, unremarkable, just warm light and a few empty tables. He stopped for a moment. He almost went in. Instead, He smiled and continued walking. Some places served their purpose once, at home later that night. He wrote a short note in a journal he rarely opened. It said only this: listen early. Speak clearly. Walk away calmly. He closed the book. Outside, the world continued its fast movement. New deals, new risks, new promises. He felt no urge to control it. The story did not belong to him anymore. It belonged to everyone who would pause when something felt slightly off, even if they could not yet explain why. And somewhere, in places that would never make the news, small sentences were being spoken, softly, honestly. That was enough. Some stories do not end with silence. They deepen, long after the noise around the broken deal faded. The effects of that single moment kept spreading in ways no one could measure. Not loudly, not proudly, just steadily, like water finding new paths. The Sheikh woke earlier these days. Not because of duty or pressure, but because his mind felt clearer at dawn. He liked those first quiet hours when the world had not yet made its demands. He would sit with tea, read slowly, listen more than he planned. He had stepped back from daily control, but he was not absent. His presence had simply changed shape. One morning, a young analyst from the foundation requested a short meeting. The request was polite but urgent. The Sheikh agreed, curious rather than concerned. When they met, the analyst spoke frankly. A major international firm had approached the foundation, asking for a review partnership. On the surface, it looked like recognition, respect, but something felt wrong. They say they want transparency, the analyst said, but they want to set the rules. The Sheikh nodded. That sentence alone told him enough. Still, he asked for the details. He listened while documents were summarized, while intentions were explained, promises were outlined. Then he asked a simple question. What would change if they walked away tomorrow? The room fell quiet. That question had become his compass. The answer revealed the truth. The partnership offered comfort, not integrity. It would place appearance above substance. He declined. News spread quietly. Some people were surprised. Others were irritated. A few understood. Later that evening, the woman who had once spoken that sentence in the restaurant stopped by his office. Not as an employee seeking guidance, but as a professional equal bringing an update. She explained how smaller organizations were requesting help. Family businesses, regional firms, people who did not have teams of lawyers or endless resources. They want protection, she said, not power. The Sheikh leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment that he realized had been missing for too long. Over time, the foundation began quietly shifting focus, away from large public partnerships, toward quieter work, education sessions, simple tools, clear explanations written in plain language, no speeches, no cameras, just access. The Sheikh attended one such session unexpectedly. He sat at the back of a modest room while a group of small business owners listened carefully. No one knew who he was. They only knew the woman at the front who spoke calmly about contracts. She explained how certain words could change outcomes, how pauses mattered, how asking questions was not disrespect. People nodded. Some looked relieved. Others looked embarrassed. The Sheikh felt something tighten in his chest. This was the real return on investment. Afterwards, one man approached her and said quietly, "No one has ever explained this without making me feel stupid." She smiled and replied, "That's because confusion is profitable." The Sheikh smiled too. Unseen as years continued, stories reached him from different places. Deals paused instead of rushed. Agreements rewritten in clear language. Partnerships improved because expectations were spoken aloud, not everywhere, but enough. He began to receive letters, not requests. Thank you notes, often unsigned, often brief. One read, "Your team helped us walk away before it hurt," another said. "We finally understood what we were signing." He did not respond to most of them. Some gratitude is not meant to return. One afternoon, the Sheikh fell ill unexpectedly. Nothing dramatic, but enough to slow him. Doctors advised rest, less travel, less stress. He obeyed, willingly. From his home, he continued to observe, to advise quietly when asked. The foundation did not weaken. It grew steadier. That pleased him more than any expansion plan ever had. During recovery, he reflected often on legacy. Not buildings, not endowments, not recognition. Influence specifically. The influence of pause. The power of stepping back. The courage of noticing. Something small and choosing not to ignore it. One evening, as the sun faded, he received a message from the woman. She shared that she had started writing a guide. Not a book for sale. Just a resource. To help people ask better questions, she wrote. He replied with one word. Good. Months later, the guide circulated quietly, translated, shared, passed hand to hand. It changed nothing. Dramatically, it changed everything, subtly, on a cool evening. The Sheikh walked again, alone, through streets he no longer tried to control. He stopped by a small cafe and ordered tea. The chair was uncomfortable. The table slightly uneven. It felt right. He listened to conversations. Round him, complaints, plans, small hopes. No one noticed him. That anonymity felt like freedom as he left. He realized something clearly. The story had never been about a deal. It had been about permission. Permission to speak. Permission to pause. Permission to trust. Discomfort back home. He wrote one last note in the same journal. Pay attention to the quiet. He closed the book and placed it away. Knowing he might not open it again, outside, life continued its restless movement. But somewhere, someone would hesitate before signing. Someone would ask for explanation. Someone would speak one simple sentence, and the echo of that choice would carry forward. Unseen, that was enough. That had always been enough. Change does not announce itself. It settles in quietly and waits to be noticed. The Sheikh noticed it one morning while reviewing a report that should have taken 10 minutes, but instead held his attention for over an hour. Not because it was complicated, because it was simple, clear, written in a way that left no room for hiding. Years ago, such clarity would have seemed impossible. Now, it was becoming normal. He leaned back in his chair and allowed himself a rare smile. Not pride. Something softer. The satisfaction that came from knowing a system was finally doing what it was meant to do without his presence guiding every step. Outside his office window, the city moved as always. People hurried. Cars honked. Somewhere, deals were being rushed, signatures chased, shortcuts defended. But somewhere else, different choices were being made. That balance mattered. Later that day, he joined a small meeting remotely. He kept his camera off. He listened as younger members of the foundation discussed a difficult case. A struggling exporter, confusing obligations, pressure from a larger partner. They spoke carefully. No one tried to impress when they finished. They turned to him for final thoughts. He waited before speaking, then said, "What happens if this partnership succeeds exactly as written?" Silence followed, then discussion. Honest discussion when the call ended. He knew they would handle it well. He didn't need to watch. That evening, he walked slowly through a nearby park. He moved carefully now, listening to his body. Slower steps had taught him to notice details he once missed. Wind through leaves. Voices carried by evening air. Laughter. Life did not need urgency to be meaningful. A memory surfaced without effort. The way the waitress had looked before she spoke. The pause. The calculation. The risk all those years ago. He wondered if she knew how far that moment had traveled. He did not think she needed to. The next week, a visitor arrived unexpectedly. An older man from a distant region. He had heard of the foundation through word of mouth. Someone had helped his nephew avoid a dangerous agreement. He had come only to say thank you. The Sheikh listened and offered tea. "No one else would slow down to explain things to us," the man said. They all spoke fast and smiled. The Sheikh nodded. Speed, he had learned, was often camouflage. When the man left, the Sheikh sat quietly for a long time. Gratitude had weight. It did not lift you upward. It pressed you inward. That night, he dreamt of the restaurant again. Not the same scene. Not the same fear. This time it was empty. The lights were off. The door closed. He woke calmly. Some chapters end on their own. Other chapters echo. Days turned into seasons. The woman continued her work, now leading teams, training others to recognize what she once saw alone. She rarely spoke of the past. When she did, it was only to remind others that experience was not something to hide from. You don't forget lessons. She once told a group, "You just decide whether they harden you or sharpen you." The Sheikh heard about this later and nodded. That was exactly right. One afternoon, he received a copy of the guide she had written, now updated by others. No introduction, no title on the cover, just pages of quiet clarity. He read it slowly, not as a founder, but as a learner at the end. There was a single line: "If something feels confusing, it probably matters." Close the document carefully. The story had come full circle. Years earlier, he had trusted smooth words because they sounded certain. Now he trusted questions because they created space. Late in the evening, he walked onto his balcony and watched the city lights appear one by one. Each light represented someone's concern, hope, fear, ambition. He had once believed leadership meant standing above it all. Now he understood. It meant standing within reach. Tomorrow, another challenge would arrive. Another proposal. Another request for approval. He was not worried, because somewhere, someone would pause, someone would reread, someone would ask, and even if they did not know why, they would trust that small discomfort. That was the legacy he no longer tried to control. It moved on, its own now quietly, steadily, humanly.